Pardon me. Better mute myself. Just in case. Mute.
That was quick. Kia ora, welcome back. We're going to carry on with the presentation. Actually, before we carry on with the presentation, were we going to get a general, I think we've got a general feel, but just get a steer as to that 8.9 target?
Yes, that'd be very
Are we all speak now or forever hold your peace if you want to say something contrary to that? Otherwise, I will take silence as acquiescence.
Yeah, well, I know I'm not too happy with 8.9. I appreciate all the reasons why it's 8.9. Fully get them. But no. I personally believe we're still maxed out, pretty much we're maxed out in our rates, so that opinion hasn't changed. So it's not going to change if it keeps going up at this rate. So no, I'm not happy with it, but I know council officers have done a huge amount of work to get it down to that. And I fully appreciate that as well. I don't know what the answer is around that. I've got potentially some thoughts, but no, I'm not. In this current climate, and the other thing I want to point out too, and it's a sidebar to this one. Wellington Regional Council had a 17% rate increase last year. Okay, so if they're going to come in with any sort of rate large increase, I want to make a big song and dance about it so that we don't get blamed for it. And that sort of stuff, because I don't think it's fair, I don't think it's reasonable, and I don't think they get, I don't think our Greater Wellington Regional Council gets enough stick for it, if you like, with regards to going to bat for our community to try and bring that down. And such, yeah, we're having a lot of troubles with dealing with Greater Wellington, I'm under the impression, with regards to, you know, maintenance work. I don't have budget for this, I don't have budget for that, I don't have the budget for else, and yet they smacked us with 17% last year. Other areas might have big problems and that are being dealt with, but I get sick and tired of us carrying the can for it, that sort of stuff. So I think we need to make some serious hard comms about us not being happy with that Greater Wellington position of dragging our rate, putting that rates burden on our community as well.
So there was 2 points there. I'll address the first one. I'd just like to reiterate that 8.9 is what we're not down to yet. It's the kind of lowest point that staff think we're able to get to. I'm sure they'll keep working to try and bring that down even more, but that's, yeah, I think what the message that I'm getting from everybody else is that we think that's quite realistic if that's all we can manage. For the second point about Greater Wellington, there has been a little bit of work going on around that, so I'll just pass over to Mark.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think it was the last session we had a comment about the rates invoice doesn't really clearly distinguish between council rates and Greater Wellington. So what the intention is that we heard that loud and clear. We are doing some work on the look of our rates invoice, and so there will be greater distinction. That will be going live for the 24-25 year. And the only other second point is that we always do, on your behalf, put in a submission to Greater Wellington's proposed rates increase.
Just wait with your microphone. Just waiting for Martin.
I guess in relation to that, if you'd like people to speak to that, if we do a submission, I'll be quite keen to go along.
Thanks for that. Nigel?
Yeah, just a couple of points. As you know, acquiescence is my middle name, but I'm perfectly comfortable with 12.1. 8.9, I want to see what gets the chopper to get to 8.9. There are other streams that councils can and should look at. For instance, there's one where we don't actually do the rating. Greater Wellington does the rating. $500,000 for Wellington NZ, for instance. Now, if we made a decision to no longer contribute to that bottomless pit and decided that we could invest that money more wisely ourselves in our own community, it wouldn't make any difference in net terms to the ratepayer, because we'd transfer the rating of it from this entity to this entity. But in terms of the benefit that the ratepayer gets, we could guarantee that $500,000 of it's going to be spent here. So there are things like that that we can look at that has a rating impact, part of an LTP discussion, but not necessarily going to change any bottom lines for the ratepayer. But one of the reasons this council has been averse to that in the past is because we would effectively be increasing rates by 0.5% to get that, and they'd see that, and then they would see Greater Wellington's being reduced by X, you know what I mean? But so you'd have to have some comms around explaining how that might work. But so there are some of those things that I think that we should be looking at as well. But in terms of the 8.9, yeah, it seems a number that people are comfortable with. But again, it's what are you cutting to get to that? For me, and yeah, Martin wants more cuts. No, we'll discuss it.
Sophie?
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I think before we've had the opportunity to see what the kind of added rates implication is for those additional initiatives that there was a majority support for through the workshops, I wouldn't want us to be absolutely wedded to 8.9 before we've had the chance to sort of see the effect of those, because yeah, it's not only what are we cutting, but it's also what are we not including that could be an opportune time for us to focus on. So I wouldn't want us to be kind of entirely solidified on 8.9 before going through this next sort of phase of exploring those additional initiatives. Yeah.
Liz?
Yeah, look, I'm just going to give you my financial advice lecture on, spending and investing, because, money comes in, you either spend it or you invest it. And I think, how that money is spent is critical. So I'm open to going higher than 8.9 if we're going to be investing, so to speak, or putting money into things that are going to give us some really good long-term gain, such as, for example, developing the recreational trails and that sort of thing. So I think it would be really short-sighted to cut back on things like that are going to have a really good spin-off for us down the track. So it all comes down to that ratio between just spending. It's like your personal budget. You can spend your money on entertainment. Betting on the Melbourne Cup, decent coffee, or you can use it to do up your house, make improvements to your standard of living, that sort of thing. So that's really what it comes down to. It's exactly the same approach. It's about being fiscally prudent with the money that you are outlaying. And so not all spending is spending, really. Some of it is investment for the future.
It's going to come down to how we talk about that too, and you might be able to help us with that, Liz. Rob?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. I think you've got to look at both sides of the coin pretty carefully here. This time last year we were briefed by the government that, okay, we're going to have a managed recession, and I think it's just beginning to bite in. And, you've got to look at the ratepayer side of it. If the rates go up quite significantly, there'll be a lot of hardship out there.
Right, so I've got some good points to take away as we go into the next phase, and a general kind of level of comfort with where we've landed at the moment on balance, I think.
Actually, can I make some comments?
Oh, sorry, Ms.
Yeah.
Travity.
Thank you.
Jocelyn.
So I agree that I don't want to be wedded to the 8.9. It would, as others have said, I think it's important to know what potentially wouldn't be included in that figure. And I'm also aware that we've got to look at this in a bigger picture too. That if we tighten our belt now, is that something that we're always going to do, or does it mean that it's going to balloon out further down the track? And I suppose money is always cheaper now, goes further than it will do in 2 or 3 years or even longer time frame. Things won't ever get cheaper.
I think that's a really good point, and one that's even more, sharply in focus now than it has been in the past as well.
Yeah, we look at our, we've seen what the interest rates are and your cost of building, et cetera, et cetera. So
Materials.
you've got to be pragmatic, but yeah, it's a balancing act as well.
Thanks, Jocelyn.
I've just got one thing.
Oh, yeah, Shelley. Yeah.
So, following on from Nigel, that money that we give to Wellington NZ now, we could repurpose into something like a tracks and trails plan, which is going to bring us benefit. Like, yeah, actually,
That yet again, you're ahead of us, Shelley.
oh,
Hey? No, you're good. I just wanted to throw one other thing in as well, is if we are going with the rates increase, at whatever it is, I just note that the government rates rebate settings haven't changed for quite a while, and that sort of stuff there as well. It'd be good to do some advocacy in that space, with regards, especially, and factoring also QV valuations are going to be coming through pretty much all about the same time. Old Taki's in for another big hit. They got a big hit last time at the long-term plan, and that they're gearing up for another hit. With this one here, it won't be 12%, it'll be more than that, through the redistribution process of valuations, and that sort of thing there as well. That'd be my thought, but I think that government rebates thing's going to be quite important to try and get some movement on that.
Thanks, Martin. Happy to follow that up.
Very quickly, one last point is the GST on rates. So there is increasingly in our region and right across the country moves by councils, both regional and local, to put a push on government to either stop the GST on rates or and we just had a little offline discussion before about the net amount that would come back to council. So don't know if we as a council are advocating for that. Don't know if we as a council want to. I know I do, but if others have a view on that, and it's grown in this region, they're really talking it up more and more. It's quite a significant number.
Great. Okay, we are now ready to move on, I think. Yep.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just thank you for that. That was really, really helpful, and I've taken some really, really good notes. So we'll keep that. Just in terms of so that was a Future for Local Government recommendation. It would equate if we were able to get back the GST on our rates income, it's about $14 million. It would make a huge impact. I know that we are advocating for the community via the submission process. The rating system review, which is part of the long-term plan, does look at the outliers. It does look at how our current rating system, how that would fare with the district-wide revaluations, which is why we want to try and get back to that third, because we're heavily on fixed charges. So we are, Councillor, we are looking at that. And in terms of the central government rebate, yes, we advocate where we can. What we're particularly strong in as a council is getting our community to access that. Those members of our community that are eligible. So we're very proactive. Our rates team are very proactively actually contacting the ratepayers. So we're operating pretty well in that space. Okay, without further ado, we'll carry on with the presentation. So this is the slide that was missing from your pack this morning. Apologies for that. I think I hit delete by mistake. So sorry, Sean. So this is just a very high level view of CapEx over 3 years. So as you can see, $89 million is what we currently have in the budget for this year's capital works program, and you can see a sharp reduction down to 71 million in year 1 of the LTP, year 2 of the LTP 71, and year 3 is sitting at 99. So a lot of work goes into this space. There's couple of, well, there's three quite stark points to make, and I'm sure once I finished, I'll hand over to Sean. But so initially, the team, when we start looking at the capital works program, we look at what we're likely to deliver this year, what's likely to be carried over into next year, what have we actually planned to do in terms of the LTP, and even with some refinement and reprioritising and pushing things out and phasing, that actually landed us at 105 million. With quite comfortably, 105 plus to be perfectly honest. We did sit in a presentation and we did hear frustrations around the table. Why do you budget for $89 million when you can't deliver on it? So we took that on board. So as a team, the number that we felt that we could actually, we looked at what could we actually effectively deliver. So I think we did $67, $68 million last financial year. So $71 million has been set on what can be delivered. So that's what we can put hand on heart and say, with cost increases, with what's planned, we can do that. And we've broken it down to renewals and upgrades. But how we got from 105 to 71 was really crude. It was a 30% reduction to every single project budget. Boom, it was gone. It was literally just taken out. So the third bullet point is really a plea from us to you. We can get the budget to $71 million because that's what we need to deliver. But the reality is the budget in each, when you cut budgets just wholesale 30%, the reality is you'll have projects where there's not enough budget for that project. So we will have in our projects, we'll have some unders, we'll have many overs. But we need the support and the flexibility from council to manage the bottom line. So we'll have to, if we've got a project in train and we need more budget, we'll have to come to the chamber and say we want to reassign budget from that project to finish that. But we'll manage the bottom line number that you agree to. And at the moment, what we've put on the table is 71. So I know a long-term plan is 10 years. We're focusing very much on year one. Year two is almost there, but it takes time to go through the 3 years. And we've already heard there's $15 million worth of new CapEx initiatives that the senior leadership team is still working through. And we've got the initiatives that you've identified through your workshops plus the community board. So there's still work to be done in that space. But in terms of, we can manage the $71 million, but we may need to shift budget across the projects because of how we've got to 71. I don't know. Sean, did you want to just add to that?
It's coming. So as Mark said, normally what we do, so I guess the council assets, so we're looking after, was it $1.7 billion worth of assets roughly? And obviously associated with those, you need to spend money on renewals, upgrades. There's a whole lot of work you need to do to keep those assets ticking over. And the LTP, again, is not we're not starting from dot in terms of year one. We're into the rolling LTP process. So we really have a well-established capital works program that's been through several iterations of LTPs before we get to here. And then over the last 3 years, obviously, there's been new things that have been added in, and there's been things that have changed in terms of that number for the capital works program. So the starting point of 105 was really after probably 3 or 4 months of intensive work across primarily infrastructure and the community facilities, parks and open space. That's where most of the capital works program is delivered. And again, what we normally do is it's a function of deliverability and can you deliver that particular project. It's also then a conversation around risk, around what is the risk if we don't actually deliver that project, and then another conversation about affordability at an overall level across the entire work program. So, and we normally start, again, we start at a much higher number, and through those processes we can bring it down to something that is more realistic. And then, so that's how we got to 105. Now, trying to get that 105 down even further when you're dealing with 324 capital projects across, might be 12 activity areas, 7, 8 activity managers, 9 activity managers. It's extremely difficult to get, and there's traditionally there's a bias towards yes, I will achieve what I need to achieve, and it's very difficult to keep going down. So this time, what we've said is, okay, well, this is a more realistic number in terms of overall delivery, but to get there, we're just going to take 33% off the total. Every project has that amount trimmed back, and it delivers it back to $71 million, as Mark said. But the flexibility, I guess, that we need is to actually move around within that program to make sure that we deliver, in terms of the overall outcome, maybe over the 3 years, we'll deliver everything that's in that program. But we need to be able to reflect the fact that some things will cost less or won't go ahead because of whatever reason, but some things will be more realistically closer to the number that we started with in terms of that $105 million. So that's how we've got the figure down to the current number. And it's, as Mark said, our ability to have a bit of flexibility around making some of those changes, as opposed to coming back with every single line item, like I said, because we've got 324 lines, and some of those are down to $10,000, $20,000 for a valve, or for a fitting, or for a piece of plant. So if we can put something in front of council that says, look, within a certain range, we have the flexibility to move around within that program as long as we don't go over the total, but we're continuing to deliver, then that will make us more efficient in terms of the overall delivery, and also keep us, I guess, closer to what we think in terms of the rates number for that $71 million. And that's it. But there are, to get there, like I said, we didn't sit down with 324 lines and say, well, that one's going to be, you can't, this is more, this is less, just the time involved in that. And again, there will always be unders and overs, no matter how hard you look at some stuff. There's something totally outside of our control that will affect our ability to deliver it.
From my end, 100% supportive of that approach. If we want you to be lean, we have to give you guys the tools to do so. We've got to have the confidence in you guys to do so. We didn't bring Darren on board with regards to have things just stay the same. And that's been reflected on by what's happened in the last 12 months with regards to how the organisation's been operating. If we need to be innovative, if we need to be able to capitalise on opportunity, you guys need to have the ability to be flexible. It's as simple as that. So that's not you don't have to sell that one to me at all. I think we just need to support the team that we've got with regards to, and look, audit and risk guys, they're pretty onto it. But we've got to have confidence in the team that's here with regards to that they are doing the things that are the right things for our community. Not that that's never been an issue in the past, but if we really want to try to work in that lean manner, you've got to have the ability to be flexible, and you've got to have the opportunity to move things around. It's just an absolute must.
Yeah, thank you. So I agree. I think probably in the past it hasn't been as flexible as what's been suggested here today, which is great. But I suppose before Sean even spoke, I suppose my question was going to be, what is the mechanism to do that? Because I think somewhere in the system there are certain thresholds upon which people can, or certain people like the chief executive and SLT members can actually spend money without coming to councillors, and having a conversation about how it all works and what oversight we have for what money is being moved around over a certain limit, I think would be also very useful.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's quite simple though, isn't it? We could just...
budget is tight.
Hang on, just...
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, but budgeted is set, unbudgeted is pretty tight. Now, I guess if I use as an example the Waikanae water treatment upgrade that we're doing, we came back to council because there was an increase in cost. So with this, it would be the same principle. We would come back to council and say, this is our bottom line, as far as total budget, we're wanting to shift this to that, to offset increase, not asking to increase that bottom line.
Thank you for that explanation. So I suppose it's a case of where there's probably times where you don't necessarily have to bring it back to council, but it's knowing where that cut-off level is in terms of the amount.
Yeah, thanks. Yep, and Sean will chip into this as well. It's normally set, so for argument's sake, with council decisions, there'll be a contingency in there. Anything over and above that will have to come back to council.
Okay.
Hang on, wait for Sean's mic.
So a good example might be, and I'm just plucking this out, so playground upgrade in Paraparumu, the budget currently within the $105 million is $500,000. We've just chopped off 30% of that budget through this process to drop it back. What I'd suggest is even, and maybe we do set some limits around how much we can move around within a percentage of intolerance, but if that project ends up being delivered for $500,000, that it isn't something that council can say, well, you told us it was going to be $300,000 and it's now 500. You know, we want to hold you to task, or you know, and because within my delegation and at a GM level there are certain thresholds, so we could talk about that in terms of how much you might be happy with in terms of that flexibility. Same with Darren's as a total, but and it's also then again. Another one might be Otaki water main renewal, $1 million in there. That's slowed right down, so we're only going to deliver $500,000 of it. Can we use that other $500,000 to ramp up, say, the Waikanae Library and get that done quicker? Those are the sorts of things that we'd like to be able, and maybe the quarterly report we have in the past, we've looked at it through there, that you might be able to do it there. That's the sort of thing we're talking at, and it's relatively close to what we do at the moment, but maybe just a bit more flexibility around that process, that we don't need necessarily council paper, or unless it's extreme and it's well outside of even that percentage that I talked about in terms of the difference.
Just to be on the safe side, are we going to float this approach past the Risk and Assurance Committee?
Certainly. We've sort of unofficially floated it past audit, but we can then now extend that to risk and assurance. Yep, that's fine.
Well, maybe. Well, it might not be necessary. It was just a thought.
The intention is to have the two independents, involved in these debriefs and workshops as we go forward. I think it would be good practice for us to keep them informed of what we're doing and take on board the request to formalise how we do this. So we've definitely got some ideas. As Sean said, it would really form part of a quarterly performance report where we would look to detail the change and actually make budget changes.
So it's just ensuring, I suppose, that we're doing our job in terms of governance, really.
Yeah. 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 Nigel?
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned that we don't create a nightmare for staff. As Sean said, you've got a couple of hundred projects, and if you're having to sort of, take a bit from this bucket and put it into this bucket, I can just see that being a complete nightmare situation from a staff point of view. And if you take someone who's just such a brilliant off-the-cuff speaker like Sean, he may have a disproportionate influence in the room as compared to some other people, and so you get that kind of thing can happen. You create a competitive environment, and it may not be equalised among by the projects, but rather by someone as erudite as Sean. So, but the other question is. CapEx costs don't obviously attract the same degree of impact on rates. So the $36 million difference, if I'm not suggesting this, but if you threw the 105 back in the pot, what's the difference between 105 and 71 in terms of its rating impact?
Nothing.
Yeah.
So nothing. So look, that's what we've done in the past. So when I say nothing, it depends on what level of debt we model. So if we put 105 back in, we would only model the debt on 71, on what we actually think we're physically going to deliver.
Yeah.
So there would be no impact on rates. If we felt we could deliver 105, we would model for 105. There would be a significant impact on rates. So
I just wonder if it's worth, because 71 says that's what we're going to do, right? But if, I personally, I'd love to have been in the room when that conversation was happening, because I just do think that you could be we could be contributing to a situation where it becomes really difficult for staff and spending a lot of time and energy about, so which pot do you take that out of to complete this project versus this one, and maybe there just needs to be more in the pot, and given that it has a minimal impact on the rates, and that's what we're going through this process for, I would be making it as easy as possible for staff to be able to deliver the maximum amount that they can, even if 71 looks like the maximum, but maybe it's not. That's just
I do think that Mike would give Sean a run for his money in terms of arguing his case, but
I'm sure.
but I think it's important to contemplate the extra layer of complexity that this imposes on staff, and just maybe just park that, have a think about it, because I think that's a good point. But Mark has something to say, so does Sean. Sean first, maybe.
Well, it was just a question, really, and so one of the issues with, if we publish $105 million worth of a CapEx work program, and then only deliver 70 of it, it's that perception that we're overinflating, because not everybody understands that the difference between the CapEx and OpEx. It just looks like we're overrating for something that we're not going to deliver. So that this does help with that, but I agree to some extent it does make things a little bit more difficult, but in the reality, most things, people are a little bit more optimistic necessarily than they should be around delivery. So it's not hugely difficult, but it is different from what we would normally do, and it's more around the perception that we're putting an even bigger number up that you're not going to deliver. But if the council, if you are okay with publishing a number that looks like that, and understanding that we won't get to 105 million, we'll get to 70 in and around that number, then stick to the status quo. But
I think what I'm hearing is that we're interested in this new way of doing it. Yeah. Rob?
Yeah,
hang on.
I'll wait.
There we go.
Oh, thanks, Janet. Yeah, as a practicing architect, it's getting pretty scary out there with building. The square meterage rate is now 5,000 a square metre. You've got, in administering a contract, you've got about 10 factors that can trigger a variation, and that's, non-availability of materials, weather, unforeseen things. And I think that what I've heard this afternoon from Darren and Sean's team, it sounds pretty good. I mean, you've got built-in contingencies, you've got the experience, which is about 95% of it, and I'm pretty confident with our management, and what they've said today is makes a lot of sense. I think 300 contracts out there. I think you're doing pretty well. Thanks.
Martin, did you want to?
Yeah, just quickly, with regards to what Nigel was saying, look, I appreciate if this was lower down the management level, but to me, the flexibility you're asking for, I'm picking is a high level flexibility. That's where I see it. That's why I'm very comfortable with it.
Cool. Okay, nothing online? We can move on. Are you going to make it?
Sorry,
that no, it was a great discussion. Thank goodness we didn't put the detail. Okay, so look, we really are on the home straight now. So just looking at my watch, 5 to 4. So look, presentation wouldn't be a presentation without our good friend, the financial strategy, the triangle, the three levers. So and there's reason the slides here because it really does set the context for the remaining slides. So for the benefit of everybody, so these are our three levers. This is effectively the diagram of our financial strategy. The financial strategy is still a work in progress, but this is a snapshot now. So our three levers are rates, debt, and our capex, and the triangle that connects the three levers together represents the levels of service. So if you wanted to change one variable, you can compensate. If you wanted to change one lever, you can compensate. You can keep the levels of service exactly as they are by compensating the other two levers. So very simple example, if you said absolutely rates, you haven't said this, but if you did say rates must go down even further, how we would do it. Rates go down further, levels of service must stay the same. The other two levers that we would be able to achieve that by, if rates go down, you increase debt and you reduce the capital works program. You know, it's kind of basic mathematics. If you said, well, we want rates down and we want debt down, so that if you change two levers, we have no option but to move the third lever in the same way, and it reduces your level of service. So that's the context. And a snapshot at the moment is as at the 7th of November. So our average rates increase is sitting at 12%. Our net debt, which we think at the end of year one of the LTP, will be sitting at 295 million, based on the $71 million capital works program. And the capital works program is sitting at 71 million, you know, notwithstanding the conversation that we've just had. So the reason why we put this slide in wasn't to peg you to 8.86 or 8.9. It was just recognition that 12% is probably north of where the council wants to be. And of course we must put some options to reduce the rates further for your consideration and for direction for staff. So so the starting position at the moment is 12%. We've taken you through how we've got there, and you know what we put on the table there is insurance. So the option behind, so if you cast your mind back to that inflation slide, we said insurance was 20%. So what we've done is we've artificially loaded the budget for insurance by $669,000, which is 0.74%, because we know that if we don't change anything, we're likely to have an increase to our insurance premium north of 20%. So we budgeted for it. But what we typically tend to do is we go to the market. And we say, these are the value of our assets. This is what we need insurance for. Please insure us. Please tell us how much. That's how it works. But there are other councils that have changed it. They've actually gone to the market and said, this is how much we've got. What cover can we have? So just as an option, so I said earlier, we're already doing some work on looking at we may change the language of a self-insurance fund, but have it externally managed, so it's protected. We're looking at other options to be more attractive to underwriters, so that the rate of insurance that we secure is cheaper. And if we don't change the way we're doing insurance, our insurance is just going to go up. But that's an option. That is definitely an option for you to think about, is to take the increase that we've made to the insurance premium out of the budget on the basis that we're doing some work in that space, with every intention of doing something to reduce our premiums going forward. Apart from that, we've very much sort of done what we think we can do. We've really had a good crack at depreciation. We've had a good look at staff costs. And insurance is another big cost to this organisation. So we've really kind of looked at the big three. So the only things left now to do is to actually go away and look at, well, reducing the budget further, and does that impact on the levels of service? So at a very high level, we simply said, well, if we wanted to go from 11.26 down to 9.86, we would have to go away and strip $1.2 million out of the budget. Will that affect levels of service? We don't know. We have to go look at, but we think it will, because we've gone as light as we possibly can. 9.86 might not be the number that you want. So then we said, well, let's drop it another one. So to get from 11.26, so if you're happy to make that move on the insurance, that gets us to 11.26. To get to 8.86, we've got to strip 2.4% out of the budget, which equates to 2.1. So you may want us to go away and bring back to the table, where is that 2.1 and what are the risks? Bearing in mind, Wellington NZ, we were going to talk to you about Wellington NZ on Thursday. That's not, that 550 and the benefits with that are great, but that's not in, that 550 isn't in these numbers. The initiatives that councillors have identified in the workshop are not in these numbers. We'll have a look. I don't think they are, and I haven't seen what the community boards have asked for. So we just have to bear in mind, if we go away and identify a number, it might be 1 million, it might be 2 million, it might be 3 million. What we've also got to be mindful that there's those councillor initiatives and the Wellington NZ that we have to look at as well. So this was really just a teaser slide to recognise that we've still got work to do.
So I have a question. In reducing, in the levels of service, so are you able to give us some examples of what those changes would be?
Not really,
Please.
no. So I mean, what everyone will think about is don't mow the berms as much, but we need to go a lot bigger than that. So no, not at this stage. The one thing that I haven't said is we have a revenue and financing policy which we have to look at as part of the LTP. That policy gives the council the ability to charge rates and fees and charges. So at the moment, our fees and charges go up by LGCI, and for many of them, we're at the midpoint of the range. So what the revenue and financing policy, it defines the private-public funding split, and so it'll have ranges. So for example, it'll say the private funding split is between 20 and 30%. We're kind of sitting on the lower end to the midpoint of those ranges. So one of the options that we have is to increase our fees and charges by more than LGCI, go harder, go to the upper limit of the ranges. We're just not in a position right now to be able to say to you, if you did that, this is how much more revenue you could generate in fees and charges, because the more you get from fees and charges, the less you have to get in rate. So that's an option that the team are actually working on anyway, but it's not on the slide. But councillor, just in terms of what we would put on the table as changes to levels of service, we haven't. Our thinking has got us to this point. We haven't even begun to think about what levels of service would we reduce yet.
Okay, thank you.
Just a suggestion to think about, a development levy, given those growth numbers that you put up there, and I'm just going from memory, about 250 rateable units, I think you said. Around year on year. If you increased the development levy on those by about 7,800, you would take care of that 2.179 million. And that might seem like a blunt instrument, but I think it's a conversation that we need to have, and I guess it's a political discussion, but I'm really interested in people who do the numbers to go, well, that's a tidy wee number, isn't it? That would work. Because I think it would work. And yeah, I think it's a conversation that we need to have.
So thank you, councillor. Look, we certainly will be having that conversation. So part of the LTP is you review your development contributions policy, and certainly the thinking is the development contributions policy will be changing. Of course, if you increase those fees, that means that the balancing number that comes from rates is less. So officers are looking at how, where are the opportunities to increase our revenue. So when you look at your capital works program, you don't change your capital works program that relates to roading. You think carefully about reducing that because you reduce your NZTA subsidies. So that kind of works against you. There's the development contributions. So we are certainly looking at that, and in our workshops, the development contribution policy and proposed changes will be brought to the table, which will impact on rates.
Yeah, sure.
Can I ask a question? Sure. I'm not sure of the rate, but am I right in understanding that places like Ryman's have a cheaper rating than normal households? Do they get discounts? Like retirement villages in Kapiti?
Yeah, so a conversation for a different day. I love this subject. So how we rate retirement villages is completely different. So
I would like to have that conversation because,
Yep.
it's not like we're going to scare them away. They're still coming. They're
Yep.
still building.
Yep.
And it seems unfair because if you end up in somewhere like Ryman's, typically you don't have no money. So why are they getting a cheaper deal than other people?
Yeah, no, look, they're not getting a cheaper deal.
No, they're not?
When you rate a retirement, when you rate for a retirement village, you're rating a village. So retirement villages have hospital facilities, they have residential facilities, they have communal facilities. So it's all broken up on. They're still paying the same rates, but it's divvied up in a different way. So it's almost got separate zonings. Of course.
Oh, thanks, Janet. Mark, can I just ask a hypothetical a hypothetical exercise? Say, for instance, a movie star developer came up and grabbed a bit of open green land up at Old Taki, say, and put 600 houses on it. What sort of development levy would he attract, do you think? He's got a beautiful area, beautiful environment. Surely he's prepared to pay absolutely top dollar for what he's getting.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, 600 homes, I might defer to Sean, but with that kind of development, they'd be seeking a developer agreement in place, which would be locking in, typically what they do is they lock in rates so that when you revise the development contributions policy, they've locked into different rates. And something of that size, we'd be probably looking at a payment plan as well. So, but if we did achieve something like that, we would have a massive spike in our development contribution revenue, which would impact on our rates. But a development like that does require infrastructure. And
Sure.
So growth funds grow, so we'd see a spike in our capital budget as well. So there would be costs. And then council, after the development contributions have been paid, council has to maintain that infrastructure as well. So, but I will defer to Sean. I can't give you the exact what would the DCs on 600 units be because there'll be financial contributions too.
Already gone in place. We're supplying a reservoir and all sorts of things there. Will councillors be sort of party or have a observation of that as it's being conducted, or will it be?
I'm going to defer to Sean actually on
Sean,
that.
yes.
I think the DCs for Otaki per lot might be in the order of $21,000 per lot. So do the sums on that in terms of 600 lots, but then there's also a financial contribution that's provided through the Resource Management Act that they're required to pay as well, and so that is a function of a percentage of the it's a different number again, and I couldn't tell you what that would be because it really depends on the size and the scale of what they're delivering, but But there are infrastructure, any subsidy or any issue in reduction in those rates has to be funded from somewhere because it has to link to an actual a piece of infrastructure that you're delivering. So, and the other flip side of that is if you've got a 2-lot subdivision or a smaller residential property that someone wants to subdivide, they will still then be subject to the same charges per lot. So yes, a developer may have the ability to absorb a bit more than that, but you have to, if you're going to do something, you need to also be aware that it potentially has an impact on some of those smaller developments as well. But it might be 20,000.
So 12 million. 12 million, right?
Yeah, and if you add financials, they're probably talking about $30,000 per lot.
So we're starting to chat amongst ourselves,
these
and we
things
do
are
have people
financials.
online, so can we just keep it a bit more structured? We're nearly there. Jocelyn?
Yeah, so just getting back to these levels of service, are these also the same as our KPIs or are they different?
Our KPIs measure our level of service per our activity. So mainly, levels of service are defined by our KPI, so they're one and the same thing. So there is a workshop planned going forward where we'll take you through the council strategy, the framework for measuring how we're achieving against that strategy, as well as the performance measures for the activities. So that is planned and through these debriefs. Look, just one of the things that I wanted to just point out. It would be good to get a steer of your views of the proposal for insurance. With revenue, you have to be really careful. So it's very easy to sit in the front and say, look, growth in the rating base is going to be 1.5%. It's very easy to do that, and then that growth doesn't happen. So we have a shortfall. Our fees and charges, we have ranges in our revenue and financing policy. So some of those fees and charges where they're sitting now, we're not getting. So it's very easy to maximise, to go to the far end of the scale to reduce the rates. But if we're not achieving the midpoint now, why are we suddenly going to achieve increased fees going forward? So it is still a balancing act. When you build revenue into our budgets, it reduces the rates. We have to be really certain that we're going to crystallise that revenue. So, which is why it's not on the slide. There is work, and you will be taken through a development contributions policy. You will be taken through the revenue and financing, plus the fees and charges. But we've got to be realistic and careful.
Is everybody still picking up all the information that's happening?
Yeah.
Just checking in.
Yeah.
Just when we recap on Thursday, maybe go over some of this later stuff, just for my benefit. Because my concentration span has pretty much ended.
Yeah.
So with the insurance one, I think potentially we need a slide on it with what the proposal is. What are the risks? Because nothing comes free, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just so that we just have a little bit more information than a verbal summary, because it is a little bit of a change, and we need to know what the impacts are if we need to draw on our insurance. What the potential impacts would be, not now verbally, a slide at the next session. Would that be okay? Nigel?
Yeah, insurance is all about risk. That's how they make their money. We pay, about 2.5 million?
Yep.
Insurance?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you take the last 10 years, for instance, so the $25 million that we as a council have gifted to an international corporation, we will have collected diddly squat out of that, but fortunate because nothing's happened. This is why a self-insurance model is a really important thing to look at. Because if we'd have employed, say, 100% self-insurance model, say they got really, really brave, then we would have a sack of gold that had 25 million in it right now. So I'm not suggesting that you do that, but I am suggesting that you seriously transition towards it. We did it at Greater Wellington and flood protection, worked out absolutely fantastic. and I would go as aggressive as as you think is possible. The other way, of course, is that when you did suggest, I think somebody's approach to insurance was to say, we have 1.6 million, what will you cover us for that? And then negotiate that, as opposed to they say, oh, it cost you 2.5 million, and we did it with Westpac Stadium. It's amazing what you can get when you tell them this is how much you've got and this is how much coverage you want. Let's talk. And
I've got
because
another idea.
there's plenty of insurance companies out there.
Got another idea. We could borrow some money and invest it for a self-insurance fund. Sorry, that was a joke. That was a joke. No, it's really good to have your experience around that kind of thing, Nigel. Any further comments on that, on the insurance? Anybody else want to pitch in? I think we'll just have another little touch on in the next session. Where are we? One more slide?
Yes.
Let's
So
try this one.
that's insurance, and then what we've said is to get us. So apart from insurance, to get us down further, we need to go away and look at how we can do that and whether it impacts on levels of service. What levels of service and how, and the risks. Yep. We feel that's the only other area to look at.
Yeah, so I think just following up on what Janet said, I think probably a little bit more information on those, like the insurance.
Yep.
Yeah, and we've
Yep.
already said that we want
Yeah,
more
thank you.
information on
Yep.
levels of service drops, whatever
Yeah,
they might
lovely.
be.
This is for year one.
This is yes, it'll be for year one, but it'll flow into years 2 to 10. So almost the last flight. So I
That's
just
one of the things I like about this today, actually, Mark, is that it's not just band-aid fixes to try and get us through the next year and keep the rates down. It's thinking about our approach, and Darren, thinking about our approach to all of this and how we can set new kind of structures and new ways of doing things that will take us into the future as well. I think it's really positive. So well done.
Okay, second last slide. So just wanted to finish off with the key takeouts from today. So the draft average rates increase as of today is 12%. We know what we're going to look at and bring back to the table to get us lower than 12. We talked a lot about personnel. So the chief executive has imposed a reduction to future staff growth. So it's kept at 436, not 452. In addition to that, we have deployed a staff vacancy loading based on a 3-year average of 20%, using a time period of 3 months to actually fill a position. And so what that's effectively done, those 2 steps have meant that personnel budgets have increased the rates by 1.1%, and normally that category is well over 3.
Just hang on a minute, just before we move on to the next one. How do we know that that hole won't be plugged with staff bringing in contractors to do the work instead, which ends up being more expensive?
Yep. So our budget for external contractors is 0, and so the budget sits within. So what does happen is you may not be able to fill a permanent role with a permanent staff member. So you may bring in a contractor to backfill that role. So that's just depending on what's happening in the market. But then you have a budget for external contractors that come in to do specific pieces of work. We don't have budget there. So that's how you know. Because your personnel will start to go way over budget.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So second key takeout is that we propose to not rates fund depreciation, increase that by 4.7 million. That's the 3182 for stormwater and wastewater, and 1495, which is the predicted uplift to depreciation from the Three Waters revaluation at June 2024. So that's reducing rates by 5.1%. Then, as I said before, the new budget bids were well in excess of $5 million. The chief executive kept that at $2 million, and we need to take you through that detail. And then further rates reductions will likely change service levels, but we'll bring that back to the table as well as the detail and insurance. So what are we taking you through on the very last slide? What are we taking you through on Thursday? So we'll obviously do a bit of a recap of today.
The last thing you said.
Yeah, sure. We will do a recap of today. We do want to take you through the details of what is that $2 million. What is the prioritisation ranking? What do we need it for? We've given you the high level $71 million capital works program. We'll take you through the detail of that. What are the projects for that? And then we'll also, I'm not sure if we can, but I know you like to see the P&L. You like to see the revenue lines, how it's all made up. If we can, we will. But that's likely to probably be later on. And then we'll agree the next steps and actions with yourself, because I think we're back with you on the 14th and the 16th of November to look at the financials. So thank you very much for your time. Oh.
Sorry, just a quick question. So the detail around the potential changes to our levels of service, will that also come back on Thursday?
I don't know. If we can, we will. We're still finalising the detail behind the $2 million. We're still finalising the detail on the capital works program. We certainly will bring back information on insurance. I'd hate to overpromise and underdeliver, but I think we need more time on that. Oh, Chris wants to.
Sorry, I was just going to say that on the 28th of November, we are talking about the framework we have, our performance measures. And I think it would be at that point in the discussion that we'd be in a position to start talking to you about that. Because it would feel weird to jump ahead of that conversation when we're wanting to make sure that we are focused on the right things for you.
Sean?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar to that in terms of timing. Those levels of service conversations, what we're talking about there are not small changes in terms of the quantum of dollars you're talking about there, $2 million to take out of an existing operational budget where we've spent the last 3 months looking for areas where we can save money and continue to deliver at the current levels of service. It's going to take a bit of time to have a look at that, and they will be things stopping, and they will be, operationally, from an infrastructure perspective, most of the work we deliver is delivered by staff. So our operations staff do the reserves, we look after our treatment plants. Changes in terms of level of service mean changes in terms of staff numbers delivering on those services in my area anyway, but it's different across the council. But that's the sort of thing we're talking about in terms of that getting down to 8.9, I think it was, in terms of the...
Well, I don't think you've had a huge amount of pressure to take a sledgehammer approach today. I think there's a certain kind of desire amongst councillors to keep moving forward, not go backwards or stand still, and be able to take advantage of opportunities, as Jocelyn said, to do things now that might cost more later, to do things now that might have a benefit in terms of revenue later. So I don't think there is a shared desire to do some streamlining and belt tightening, but not ball and chain kind of stuff. Martin?
Yeah, look, I was actually just flagging something for next year, something too major. Just giving that clear understanding of the debt-to-income ratios, debt per household, and how it perhaps relates to other councils. That's just questioning that we'll get more like from the community. So just be good to have a clear understanding of where that sits. But not a hurry for it at all. There might be other mechanisms you can pull it out of next year, sort of thing. But
great, thanks, Martin. Nigel?
Yeah, I was just wondering where it leaves us with. I mean, we had a compelling conversation with Ngā Manu the other day, for instance, who are looking for about 1.94 million from council for a visitor centre that would fit in nicely with our economic development and tourism strategy, etc., etc. So, so I'm just wondering about where those sorts of projects are. or are they aren't under the current? So are they still live conversations? Is the question.
Short answer is yes. So within the economic development strategy refresh, part of what we've been doing is obviously supporting our manu through some of the funds that we have. That is still baked into the budget, and so it'll just be the extent to which we're covering how much they're after over that period of time versus that it's not there at all.
That's just where it will be handy to kind of have a list, you know, because everybody does have their wish list. You know, Cassie wants a burnout pad and a recreation centre, and
You want a casino?
yeah, Shelley wants a casino. I'm just supporting her on that. Things like that. So yeah, because if you know, if we're having to, you know, I mean, I don't know who gets to make the determination around any cuts to service levels. So if that's done at a staff level, if it's done at a council level based on decisions that we've made, or, but it sounds like an interesting conversation next time anyway.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think what we bring to the table is where we've landed with our chief executive. So further cuts to that we'll propose option, and it is the council's decision to make. We will continue in all of our presentations to keep a running tally of initiatives that you want to see, both OPEX, both CAPEX. Wellington NZ might be in that, and just keep reminding you of, you know, what's in the budget, what's not, what do we still have to think about, which year would that potentially go in. So that's absolutely what our intention is to just keep that running tally live for you.
So just with Wellington NZ, John Allen did express an interest in coming to talk to all of us about the wonderful things that they do with our contribution. Is that worth his while?
No.
Would you like him to come?
Not unless he wants to face a grilling. It does. I mean, we've had visits before where they have been essentially PR exercises. They haven't been able to be put to the test. And in any of those situations when we are going into bat for ratepayers, we are their advocate, and sometimes there will be hard and difficult questions, but they need to be put, and they need to be put in a public forum. It's not an attack as such, and they may well have brilliant answers that convince us that we should be giving them even more money, but it's quite likely that that wouldn't be the case as well. But the question that the economic development people presumably would ask is that if we decided that that money could be redeployed and therefore, you know, rated, that is that as well as or and instead of current funding levels inside that area. So that would be another question, I would think. That would be a live question. So is it in the ED space, here's another 550,000, or in fact, let's use that to replace what's currently being spent, in which case you've got extra. But that's another conversation as well. I wouldn't advise. I wouldn't advise it.
Adding to that, if they can't produce a quick profit and loss that shows what they've done with that $550,000, someone's got to come in here and tell us what they think they've done with it. Well, that's not acceptable to me. And that sort of stuff. They should be able to do that. They should be able to account for that money, and they should be able to do it quite
so
easily.
Something in writing would be preferable.
Well, we should be getting, quite frankly, I don't see why we shouldn't be getting that an annual report back anyway, with regards to that money. I don't need to know, like, down to the last dollar and that sort of stuff, but I'd like to know what represents our value for money out of that. And at the moment, we just seem to be constantly getting the runaround with regards to trying to get that question, and it should be pretty straightforward. And having been down to Wellington, I know the general answer we get back is, well, you guys are pretty lucky. We put on all these big cool events in Wellington, and people come up and visit you while they're here. Well, that's not good enough for me. Quite frankly, I think we've got just as much to offer here as they have down there, and they've done an absolute crap job of promoting us in the past.
Can I just chip in here?
for
I've
a
opened
second.
a can of worms. Just be careful of your language in terms of respect, please. We are live streaming. Glenn?
I'll just say from a previous tourism operator, and to be quite frank, one of the bigger ones in the area, I saw no value at all from Wellington NZ. I tried to engage with them, and I didn't see any value from a commercial operator's point of view. So I'd like to see that money spent better for our community and our tourism sector.
Thanks for that contribution, Glenn.
Yeah.
First-hand
2 cents.
experience. Anything else before we finish while you've got them unmuted?
Yeah, just that I like the strategic intent that Mark and the C has outlaid, and I also would like to see that 2 million or the service levels would be good to understand. But I'm all for austerity and rates affordability, so I'd like to see that. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Okay, we're going to wrap up there because we're almost on time. Thanks to the team. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks, Sean and Chris and Hannah and James and Mike and Jess and you two. Run out of it. Cheryl and
Darren? And thank you for